now being joined by Glenn Dessen from Norway. He's an expert on Russian foreign policy and geopolitics and professor of international relations at the University of Southeastern Norway. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now, apart from China and Brazil, everybody else at the UNSC abstained or said that an independent probe or investigation into the Nord Stream gas explosions were not required. But the question that arises here is that what is wrong in demanding for an independent probe which does not include anyone from the Russian side or that from the West?
No, there's nothing wrong with this. And again, the attack on the European energy infrastructure is obviously very political. So there's no trust in any unilateral probe by any of the conflicting parties. It will not be reliable. So, and keep in mind, back in October, Sweden even rejected a common probe with Denmark and Germany, citing national security. So there's obviously a lot at stake here, and this also suggests there's little reliability. So yes, the solution is an independent probe, ideally bringing in India, Brazil, or some other country which has credibility. So I guess in a unilateral probe by the US, the Europeans, or Russia would never be trusted. And in regards to the statement just now that the US claims the Russians' demands or accusations are unfounded, well, they're unfounded because the US is also rejecting any independent investigation. So it seems absurd, to be honest, why anyone would actually oppose this.
Right, absolutely, Professor. Now, we know that Sweden, Denmark and Germany say that they are conducting their own probe. But how reliable are they, keeping in mind that all these three countries back Ukraine in the ongoing war?
Well, it's not reliable. I don't think there can be any reliable probe by these countries because we're also in an information war against the Russians. I mean, can you really imagine any scenario where any of these countries would do an investigation and then publish results that would undermine the position of Ukraine or cause splits within NATO or even clear Russia of any wrongdoings? It doesn't seem likely at all. So it seems obvious that it was the US that attacked this energy infrastructure. But again, our security dependence on them means that we cannot criticize them in our investigations. Meanwhile, because we're fighting a proxy war with Ukrainians against Russia, it also means that we're more or less obligated to point the finger at Moscow, irrespective of how ridiculous the claim might be that they attacked their own pipeline.
Right, absolutely. I also want to seek your assessment regarding a report by Seymour Hersh, which came just a few weeks back. Now, he accused US of cover-up over Nord Stream sabotage. What are your viewpoints on this?
Well, he's a very credible, he's a very renowned investigative journalist. I mean, he's the one who exposed the My Lai massacre in Vietnam, the cover-up there, the Watergate, bombing of Cambodia, covered the CIA's program of domestic spying, and also the U.S. torture at Abu Ghraib in Iraq. Now, I'm not saying we should uncritically accept his report that the U.S. assisted by Norway was behind this, but it should be enough to launch an independent investigation into who attacked the European infrastructure. Because, well, it's rather telling that here in the West, overnight, he was transformed from an investigative journalist to an old, possibly senile Putinist. So, meanwhile, any reports from the U.S. intelligence community about Ukrainians on a sailboat with explosive and snorkeling equipment is suddenly very credible. It is also worth noting that after this report came out by Seymour Hersh, this is when the counter-narrative that Russia did it seemed to be more ridiculous. So at this point, we actually saw the U.S. throw the Ukrainians under the bus by claiming it was a pro-Ukrainian group. And the U.S. claimed they knew this all along, but they needed to protect Ukraine. So even by their own admission, the U.S. now admit that they lied to their public and the world as they pointed the fingers towards Russia when they said that they knew it was the Ukrainians. Obviously, it wasn't the Ukrainians. I think it's quite obvious it was the United States. But given how much deception going on and the lying, given how much is at stake, I think Seymour Hersh's report should definitely lay the foundation for an independent investigation. And in this investigation, the Russians, Americans, and Europeans cannot have a central role because they're not credible.
Right, absolutely, Professor. Thank you so much for joining us on WION and sharing your insights with us on this. Thanks very much.
My pleasure.